in Democracy20 tonight. A look at how sport has been transformed since the dawn of democracy in South Africa. Port Elizabeth's oldest rugby team, once spurned by other clubs, is now taking part in a prestigious local competition.
We really feel good in playing in the Community Cup, and also the fact that the Community Cup is mostly played by white teams, and as a black team or a team that comes from a previously disadvantaged community, it really means a lot for us to qualify.
And on this day 20 years ago, the first land restitution took place in the picturesque Eastern Cape. Well, good evening and welcome to the second episode of Democracy20. I am Tabi Sositole. Well, in this program series, we'll be looking at the progress made and challenges that have faced South African sports in the past 20 years. Now, Sports Minister Fikile Mbalula issued a stern warning to sporting structures who do not comply with transformation requirements. Mbalula received the first transformation status report from the Eminent Persons Group in Johannesburg today. The EPG was appointed to assist Mbalula in monitoring and evaluating the current transformation process in sport. The report deals with the transformation status of 5 sporting codes, namely football, rugby, cricket, athletics and netball.
The issue of transformation of South African sports has reared its head again as South Africa prepares to go to the polls on the 7th of May. A transformation charter is not a new concept. During the term of Minister of Sport and Recreation, Nqonde Balfour, there was much talk of the need for such a document to impose the will of government on rebellious sports federations in respect of transformation at all levels of operations, ranging from administrators to players and officials. The proposed charter, which has been described as a guide for transforming sport in the country, was frequently discussed in the same breath as calls for something similar to a Sports Equity Act or a Black Economic Empowerment Act in the sports context. This was legislation aimed at forcing those federations reluctant to embrace transformation to play an active role in promoting the representation of all groups in sport.
The next 20 years of freedom are not about unity only. They are about aggressive transformation in terms of now knuckling down and addressing those challenges that face our people, facilities, integration, addressing inequality, demographics, representativity, guided by the agreements that we have. So this is unity in action.
The lack of transformation in South African sports is also evident in the support from the public. Sports in South Africa seems to not have grasped the concept that to attract a new demographic of supporters, there is a need to include people from that demographic in teams. South Africa also had the opportunity of hosting major international sporting events in recent years, which has seen the power of sport as a tool used to uniting a nation.
If people understand where we're coming from, I mean, we were so divided in sport, that it was actually ugly, just to use that word. But where we are now, we're united. We're doing things together. It's working in some of our schools. It's working very well in some of our clubs. And you can see that people are coming through in our federations. So, yes, for the past 20 years, we've done something. And nobody can turn around and say that for 20 years, sport has been sleeping.
The Transformation Charter is based on designing, structuring and implementing a range of initiatives as part of a process of reorganizing the operational and strategic initiatives. So this new Transformation Status report has measurables: transform or suffer the consequences. That was Mbalula's message to sporting federations and bodies at Olympic House. He promised the rewards for those who comply, but those who don't will face punitive measures, including the withdrawal of government support and funding.
Those big federations who think that they can escape because they've got money, they can sustain themselves, we are not going to allow any structure or any federation, big or small, to basically host big functions here when it is not reflective of the transformation agenda in the country.
EPG chairperson Professor Somadoda Fikeni says the report also highlights the importance of proper sporting facilities and training from a young age. He says hard work lies ahead.
Each federation should examine this report and have a program of transforming itself, because annually we will be having these reports and there will be sanctions and incentives for those who transform. Where any federation needs assistance in transformation, that should be done. But most important in this report, it focuses on sports in schools and facilities in communities, because that's where you develop the critical mass that later on develops into your national teams.
The EPG has already expanded the process to include 11 other sporting codes. Their feedback is expected by the end of May. Lebohang Tube, SABC News.
Sumadoda Figeni, Sports Minister Fikile Mbalula, as well as President of SASCOC, Mr. Gideon Sam, in that report. Now, as usual, we do ask you to speak to us right here on the show. You can participate in tonight's program. Tell us what you think. Send us your emails to elections@sabc.co.za, or you can send us SMSs, this to 33726. Remember to begin your message with the word vote, and every SMS will cost you R1.50. For tweets, then use the hashtag SABC Elections, and you can also find us on our Facebook page, that's SABC News Online. We already seen a lot of reaction from this story in as far as what the sports minister had said. I'm sure we're going to have a lot. Now we move on. After 20 years of democracy, a team that has was once known as the Kitchen Boys is now called the Spring Rose and is the oldest rugby team in Port Elizabeth. It has made great strides.
A rugby club since 1907, celebrating 106 years. The Spring Rose Rugby Club continues to keep young men off the streets, spreading their love for rugby. This year they look forward to playing the Community Cup, which is an achievement and a highlight for the team. After 20 years of democracy, the club has groomed players such as Soli Tibilika, Zwandile Stick, Lucky Mange and many more. The team, however, still faces financial challenges in a previously disadvantaged community.
The biggest challenge is the money. Yeah, we're suffering with the money because some of the boys here, our guys, they don't go to school, they don't work. Some of them are single parents, they live with single parents. And it's a struggle, especially during the week after practice, to come to the gym and also to go home.
Despite lacking funds for match fees, a physiotherapist and proper practice material, the Spring Roses still continue to love their rugby. In green blazers that carry a lot of history, they take pride in their rugby and looking forward to their participation in the Community Rugby Cup.
And we really feel good in playing in the Community Cup, and also the fact that the Community Cup is mostly played by white teams, and as a black team or a team that comes from a previously disadvantaged community, it really means a lot for us to qualify.
A team that is woven into the Nelson Mandela Bay community, and its history still continues to give young men a reason to stay off the streets. The club has become like a family to them, and even though some sponsors come through now and then, it feels with proper funding and resources, the team could compete better and against anyone. Ifwe Poti, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
As we said, your tweets have been coming in thick and fast. Let's take a quick at one that has come through already. This one comes from Kolani Ngwegazi, and he says, it looks like both rugby and cricket are exclusively for whites. There is not enough transformation in both codes. As I said, you can see hashtag as SABC Elections. That's where you can get hold of us to send us your tweets, your comments, and of course, our email address. We continue after the short break. Don't go away.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
When a man's an empty kettle, he should be on his mettle, and yet I'm torn apart. Just because I'm presuming that I could be kinda human if I only had a heart. I'd be friends with the sparrows and the boy who shoots the arrows if I only had a heart.
SABC News plays a critical role in providing unbiased and reliable news. We have a well-established reputation of uncovering, reporting and delivering news. A significant growth in popularity of our news demonstrates the demand for our news content. We continue to provide unrivaled coverage of vital events in and out of the country. Wherever the news is happening, we'll be there to bring them to you at the right time. No one has the news covered like SABC News. We lead and they follow. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
We'll bring you highlights of Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan's 2014-15 budget policy statement.
We have to work together to radically change our economy. This means working with our major businesses so that they sparkle across the globe.
Gordhan has tabled a 1.1 trillion rand budget, which is focused on accelerating economic growth, job creation and building a more equal society.
More than 4 billion job opportunities were funded over this time, and 6 million job opportunities will be created over the next 5 years.
A View from the House, weekdays at 2:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. Well, posters, leaflets, photos and all memorabilia that accompany the global anti-apartheid campaign based in Britain have gone online so that the history of the movement can be preserved and accessed by everybody. The digitization of the archives have been launched to coincide with South Africa's celebrations of 20 years of democracy. The website was launched at an event in London which had a nostalgic feel. From London, Catherine Drew reports.
They had a lot to talk about, some old friends catching up, reminiscing. Most here spent decades working to overthrow the apartheid government of South Africa. Now the documentation of that struggle, which was collected over years from garages and attics, is arranged neatly in one place.
It was a very organisation without many resources, but they did keep a lot of the paperwork, and especially the posters and the leaflets. It was a huge job, first of all, just to sort it out. And in the early days, in 1995, we gave it to the Bodleian because they had the resources to employ an archivist, and it took the archivist 4 years just to put all the stuff into order and into boxes and file it properly. Then it's taken us a few years to scan a lot of it and put it online.
Before the material was put online, anyone wishing to look at it had to go to Oxford University's Bodleian Library. The website has also collected together videos of the movement's events.
As you may all know, you've actually arrived a little early and caught us a bit on the hop. We've now got the microphones working.
Long-time activist Suresh Kamath was left to entertain crowds at a 1988 gathering in Hyde Park.
But we were able to mobilise tens and hundreds of thousands of people at various times, particularly towards the end of the 80s. We had a couple of demonstrations, a big one in Hyde Park where Archbishop Tutu spoke, calling for the release of Nelson Mandela and all political prisoners, and we had 250,000 people there, perhaps the biggest demonstration on an international issue that Britain has ever seen.
We say, campaign with us for the release of Nelson Mandela and all our political leaders now.
Some of this material will form the basis of an exhibition which will travel around the UK to coincide with South Africa's 20th anniversary celebrations. The exhibit also seeks to tell the less well-known stories, like that of the London recruits, 60 or so young men and women recruited by Ronnie Casrills through the Young Communist League to help rebuild the ANC following the Rivonia trials. One, Graham White, has released this video to show how he used a false-bottom suitcase for smuggling.
The suitcase with the false bottom that you can see in there.
The recruits were white people with no connection to South Africa who posed as tourists or business people. Ken Keeble went on 2 missions. In later life, he decided to track down other London recruits and has written a book about it.
Until this book was produced, we didn't know the whole scope of the operation, and that's what we now know, that the London recruits, as they became known, did similar operations inside South Africa at least once a year, every year, from 1967 to 1973. Posting letters, distributing leaflets in various ways, setting off street broadcasts and a variety of other things. Some of them also did a load of other activities like smuggling arms, helping ANC fighters to enter South Africa or taking messages and so on.
So far, Keeble has traced 40 recruits, some of whom gathered for the website launch.
This website launch has a celebratory feel. Some of these veterans were involved in the anti-apartheid movement for decades, never knowing if it would succeed. Tonight, they are celebrating South Africa's 20 years of democracy. Catherine Drew, SABC News, London.
The SMSs are coming thick and fast, and so your tweets. Let's take a quick look at those as well. Well, Yasin Ahmed says, I disagree with the previous statement. There are enough black and coloured players in the Springbok and Proteas side. He hashtag us at SABC Elections. Another one from, I think it's Machale Macha, who says, football development is being taken for granted by SAFA. Look at rugby and cricket. We are world-class competitors as far as those sporting codes are concerned. Rufio Mudau says, SABC Online, our country has a lot of good and fascinating plans and policies, but we still fail to implement them. I guess that is possibly one of the biggest indictments as far as all of these, things that come out in terms of these reports. But hopefully we will get to the sports minister sometime to come and speak of that. How do they implement some of the measures that they've asked in as far as transformation in sport? Don't forget to carry on sending those tweets, hashtag at SABC Elections. We take a quick break. Stay with us.
Get the Samsung Galaxy S4 from Telkom with a massive 5 gigs data, 100 included minutes and free uncapped Wi-Fi for just $369 per month on SA's best mobile broadband network. Rethink possibilities. Call, click, go to a Telkom store. Telkom.
Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Sports Live, the show that brings you the latest local and international news, live interviews with the who's who in sport. He's the first South African to wear a yellow jersey that was at the Tour de France this year.
It's the first time that we get a boxer who's recognized by the Ring magazine as the best fighter in the planet to visit our country.
And he's very close to world record pace. And in fact, it is a new world record.
When you cross the line, what went through one's mind?
None of the four of us knew who had won. The scoreboard is always on the left, but all of us tend to the right. No, we just waited for the country to go down. RSA.
That's Sports Live, daily at 8:30 p.m. on SABC News. Zoom into Africa. This is Kenya. The president is Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. Kenya got independent from the United Kingdom on 12 December 1963. The population is more than 42 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Kenya shilling.
Welcome back now. 16 years after being removed from their land at gunpoint, the Mfengu people of Tsitsikamma, or the Fingos as they are more commonly known, have had their land restored. The restitution agreement signed by Fingos, farmers and the state today is the first of its kind in the country.
In an historic settlement, the state agreed to pay almost 38 million rands in restitution of land claims by the Fingos. Of this, almost 36 million rands goes to the 19 farmers who are being expropriated. The remaining almost 2 million rands will be paid out to the Fingos. For the Fingos, today was a day of jubilation, ending a 16-year struggle to get back the land from which they'd been forcefully removed. For the farmers who've developed this land in the meantime, it was not such a happy occasion.
We have laid a basis for a sound and I would also say equitable and fair deal between two groups in conflict.
I'm feeling very happy because our people now can return to their land. I'm very happy.
I can confirm and promise you there's no jubilance amongst the farmers about the outcome as such.
The Fingos have agreed to let the farmers lease the land from them for the next year. The Mfengu community will then decide the way forward.
Now, KwaMashu, north of Durban, has always been a hotspot during elections. The area encompasses the KwaMashu men's hostel, once a feared no-go area. Other political violence and crime has been rampant here. Scores of people, including local political leaders, have been killed in violent attacks as well as clashes.
A picture tells 1,000 words, or does it? These election posters tell a tale of political tolerance, side by side. But on the ground, a different story is unfolding. These days, an uneasy calm prevails, but just a few weeks ago, the mood was tense. Grief and fear gripped residents as political party leaders were slain. Politicians found themselves in the midst of a political crisis. This area, Ward 39, is no stranger to such conflicts. It's a hotly contested area, even more so on the eve of a by-election. But back in 2009, during the national general elections, when the then reigning party, the IFP, was still very much in control, voters went to the polls with very few glitches. The birth of the National Freedom Party, a splinter party from the IFP, brought about a change in the political arena. The two parties were instant rivals, with members often clashing publicly. In an effort by the IEC to ensure peace, tolerance and violent-free campaigning, meetings were held and pledges were signed for peaceful coexistence. But in a highly contested territory such as this one, even such efforts seldom bear fruit.
I did invite the leader of the NFP to a meeting which was held with the National Executive Committee of the party, which I think went off well as far as it went. But sadly, even after that meeting, one of our members was killed again. But that should not make us abandon hope, because we know where we come from. We come from the People's War here, which cost us more than 20,000 lives in this country. Therefore, we should not be disheartened or get despondent merely because those evil people who kill other people haven't stopped doing their dirty work of killing other people. I think that with the determination which saw us through the People's War of the 80s and 90s, we're quite confident that we'll see this one through as well.
In light of the coming election, all parties are fervently campaigning to garner the maximum number of votes. Their campaigns have intensified under the watchful eye of police, who've been deployed in the area in large numbers.
The key message to the people of this area is that it is important for them to understand the democracy, because democracy means people have to choose the party of their choice. Although they are under a lot of pressure from other political parties, although there are riggings and shenanigans, although they are being under threats, but it is important that they go out in their numbers to cast their votes. That is important because that is the essence of democracy.
The changing political landscape in KwaMashu has provided opportunities for other parties to campaign.
There have been coordination of campaigns for almost all parties. Each party has been given space to campaign, and there have been dedicated days allocated for parties to campaign. And I think that has helped to ensure that all parties get space to campaign. We must ensure that the elections goes free and fair. We want to say that as the ANC, we will work with all parties to ensure stability in KwaMashu Hostel. We condemn the killings that took place in the past, and will want to ensure that there is stability.
It remains to be seen if peace and stability will prevail this time around. These residents, these voters, will determine how this story ends. I am Mhlongo, SABC News at the KwaMashu Hostel.
We've come to the end of the show, but before we go, let's take a quick look at a few of your tweets. This one coming from Steve, #PW. He says, Tabuso, there has not, well, in fact, well, no, it has not. Bafana Bafana still has no quota. Why not? I think coming back to the fact that we need more change in as far as our sports is concerned and transformation. Nothing has changed. Look at the weekly rugby squads. for the Super Rugby cricket, just the same, white people in those squads. I think this comes, as we said, from the transformation report that was handed to the sports minister earlier today. Let's take a quick look at another one of our tweets coming through. This one from Fofo Pue. Do you have any more tweets? It looks like that was the last one. But anyway, do not forget to stay in touch with us right here on the show. You can send us your questions, anything you like to chat on right here on Democracy20, and also catch our sister channel, this on SABC2 at 6 o'clock, hosted by Leanne Manners, Elections 2014. That's what that show is called. This one is Democracy20, as we celebrate 20 years of democracy. You can email us elections@sabc.co.za, and you can also get hold of us with Twitter, as you can saw, hashtag SABC Elections, as well as SMSs. I think the SMS number is 33726. That costs you R1.50 per SMS. Tell us your views. What do you think of the show? What you'd like to see on the show as we lead up to the elections on the 7th of May in the country. And that's all we have for you for now. As I said, make sure you join us again tomorrow evening at 6:30 on SABC3, as well as SABC News Channel 404 for another look at how far we've come as a country in our 20 years of democracy. The English news continues at 7 o'clock with Bashni, Peter, as well as Simon Burke. You stay tuned right here at SABC News Channel.
Take a pinch of alpha, that's for fun. Stir it up. After that, some fidelity, titty-dum. Yeah, sprinkle in a magic peanut. Zippity-dee-dee. Chop that up.